environmentalists came and did tests on this particular spot and found the radioactive levels here to be higher than Chernobyl in Russia. Okay, the response of the local government was to put duct tape, police duct tape, but the duct tape doesn't keep the people out and it doesn't keep the radiation in. Okay, so it didn't really help. This grass was brought here from South America. The grass was planted on mine dumps to absorb heavy metals and also to control the dust. Okay, now once the mine gets abandoned, the vegetation of the tailings dams are not sustained, and the plants begin to disappear, and in the dry season the dust gets into the open again, and blows off into the communities. In the rain season, what happens is that the water runs off these old tailings and they run downstream, and Soweto is towards the southeast and Kagiso is due south from here, and they're both in basins, so all the stuff runs down towards Soweto. If you look at the wind direction as well, and towards Kagiso, if you look at the wind direction as well, it also blows in that direction, you know, so those people are breathing poison, and the water, the groundwater and surface water down there are all being poisoned by what runs off from this particular dump. The radioactivity levels on this dump are equal to Chernobyl, and you have the community, 20,000 people living right next to this dump, all around this dump in actual fact. You know, so all these people here will have a high risk of cancer, they will have lots of respiratory problems, and they will not be able to use the natural water in this area at all. It's just impossible to use this water, because you'll get very, very sick if you do. Well, it looks as if, given the dysfunctional toilets, people are now using it as a toilet. So it's really, really just completely unhygienic, and the conditions are just completely unacceptable. If you have a heavy rain season and so on, also it's a prime area for outbreaks of cholera. And you would find all the sister elements of uranium here, things like strontium and so on. And what happens with uranium is that it goes straight for your bones and is a prime cause of bone cancer, and it goes straight for your DNA codes. And if it rewrites your DNA codes, then the children that gets born from you get born all weird, you know, with heads that are either too small or too big, with arms that are deformed, with bodies that are deformed, and so on. In this community, there should really be a health survey, and there has been pressure from environmentalists and health workers and so on to try and get the government to sponsor an epidemiological survey to determine if there is an impact from these dumps on local communities. Just from our observations, we have seen large numbers of people that are deformed born in communities like this one. Certainly Kagiso being in a basin, there's a basin behind the ridge that forms the Witwatersrand. You travel all the way along Main Reef Road from Springs right through to Randfontein. All along that road you have the old mines, and to the south of that road you have townships. You know, and it's almost as if the apartheid government placed the townships within the shadow of mine dumps. You know, it's very seldom that you find a white community living in the shadow of a mine dump, but very often that you find black townships. And one of the reasons why we need to address the spatial arrangements of apartheid is to move people out of these unhealthy areas where they've been forced to settle in. And informal settlers settle on places like this because this is really the only land that is left to them. And that's really not commercially viable for industry or factories or estates or whatever. And so the property developers don't care about land like this. And so the informal settlers move into it.
Where would you like to see them settled, people?
Well, I think that if we have normal urban settlement patterns in South Africa where workers actually live close to where they work, it would make a huge big difference. At the moment, people who live in townships, mainly working class people, spend an awful lot of money, as much as 30% of their income, just on transport to and from work. Which then leaves very little income for rent, for school fees, and for food, basically. The apartheid arrangements were not made with an economic sense. They were made to prevent the working class from being able to occupy their workplaces, so put them far away from where they work. The furthest places from the city centre in the Johannesburg context were the areas where the mine dumps are. The colour of this dump, this yellow-orange colour, indicates a high content of uranium. When uranium is mined, it is actually the concentrate from the uranium is packed into what is called uranium cakes, yellow cake. And this is typically the colour of yellow cake that you see here. If you go to the bottom of this dump, you'll see that it becomes reddish. That is the heavier iron that is sunk down to the bottom of the dump. Very often when you look at mine dumps, they start off being a fairly light colour at the top, and then they change colour from white to yellow to orange to red at the bottom. And when you get an oxidization process with iron and copper and so on, all of which are in these dumps, the chemical reaction is to form acid. And this then creates, through that oxidization process, acid mine drainage into the streams and into the underground water in the area. And by the way, the acid water also then, in the normal streams, eat away at the banks of the stream and so on, releasing the natural uranium that is there. The acid actually acts as a catalyst to release the radioactive materials that are there in normal streams as well. We're very concerned also that what is happening with this yellow cake is that people are actually taking it and baking it dry, and then they're selling it to pregnant women in town and in townships and so on. In the old days, people used to eat sand from termite mounds and anthills when they are pregnant, and actual mine tailings is now finding its way into that market. And the mine tailings is highly poisonous and very radioactive, and it will contribute to an increase in people born with deformities. If you look across at that mine dump over there, there's a brick factory there that actually uses tailings sand to make bricks. Okay, and those bricks, if they get into the household, will elevate the radioactivity or the radioactive levels in those households. It's very, very problematic that project exists at all. What you have here is a stormwater channel, but it was also a channel that drained the tailings dams behind us on the ridge into the lake that we just took pictures of just now. And this water that comes down here would also contain all the heavy metals. It would contain uranium. It would also contain high levels of acidity because of the oxidization process involving the heavy minerals that is there. And this would all spill down into this lake, and this lake is where the water table more or less is. And then it would go down further into the areas of Kagiso and so on downstream. We will see the rivers in Kagiso when we go there. So the issues of Kagiso is much more than just cracked housing. It is also the environmental impact of being caught in a basin surrounded by mining waste. Okay, this is Lake Robinson. It used to be a picnic area when we were kids. People used to swim and canoe here and so on. You can see the lake is now dry because they've stopped pumping water, but until About 4 months ago, it was still full of water. But you can see it's a radiation or radioactive area. It's right next to Randfontein, and a fairly rich area of Randfontein on this particular side over here. The mining company that was here was Harmony, and then later on they sold to Mintails, and they tried to sell this area as a recreational area to Chinese property developers at some point. Very, very problematic. Just right next to Lake Robinson will be the Robinson village that we will go to. Used to be an old mining village that is too radioactive for people to live in now. The houses have been abandoned, but informal settlers have moved into those houses. We'll quickly pass by them.